Good evening, everybody. Looks like we're having a slow turnout. I wish to thank all of you for coming. I see one or two people came in and they went out. I don't know why, but I want to thank everybody for joining this Zoom meeting, especially the three candidates. All three giving up their evening to join us to answer questions. Uh, as everyone knows, the candidates we have is City Councilman Marcus Griffith, Mount Vernon Chief of Staff, Reverend Darrell Morton, and the former chairman of the Charter Commission, Derrickson Lawrence. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much. It is an honor to have them appear before us. We feel that they deserve our vote. This tonight will help you decide which way you are going to vote. These questions are picked from the neighborhood, the Fleetwood neighborhood people, and then with their concerns. Each candidate will get 2 minutes to answer each question. The opening and closing remarks will also be for 2 minutes. There is a timer where you see the word Chester Hill Park. That will turn into a clock, and you'll just please stay within those 2 minutes. It helps us keep track and keep the meeting short. This forum is sponsored by a couple of groups, which I really don't see here. But anyway, beside myself, John DiGiovanni, the president of the Fleetwood Citizen Society, the Oakland Heights Homeowners Association, Axel Emberman, Chester Hill Park Neighborhood Association, Albert Thomas, the Fleetwood Neighborhood Association, Michael Justino, and Neighbors That Care, that's Ronnie Lickman. And thank them all. Okay, in the order of questions, we were deciding how to do it, but you guys had your names picked from the hat at the Board of Election headquarters. So we're going to stay by that list. Okay, which would mean the open statement will start with Marcus Griffith. The first question will be answered starting with Darrell Morton. The second question will be answered starting with Derrickson Lawrence, sorry. And it would, just keep rotating like that, what we normally do with our regular meetings. I would like to remind the candidates to stay within the allotted time frame. And as we do with the other meetings, please keep it civil. I think most of you, if not all of you, know Joe Pombo. He was an active Mount Vernon resident, but for some reason decided to move to Jersey. Why anybody would like to leave Mount Vernon, I don't know.
Yep.
Joe is a very highly qualified computer tech. He'll be asking all the questions and handling all the technical work and difficulties that involved with that. I guess at this point, I'll hand the meeting over to Joe, and hopefully everything goes a little smoother than it's going now.
All right.
Thank you, Joe.
You got it. Thanks everybody for joining. Again, my name is Joe Pombo, former resident of the Chester Hill Park neighborhood. As you'll see, the Chester Hill Park square at the top is actually the timer tonight. And each candidate, like we said, will be given 2 minutes for their introduction and their answers to each of the questions. So we're going to start with Marcus, but I think Marcus dropped out of the. Let me just suggest. In the interest of time, why don't we?
I can go. I mean, he can. It's fine.
Yeah, when he comes in, we can go. Yeah. Darren can go first, and then we'll just move around. Are you all right?
I am fine.
Okay.
I believe that I'm fine.
All right, good.
All right.
So go ahead, Reverend Darren Morton. You can start, and then we'll have Derrickson with your introductions.
Okay, is the clock? Trying to figure out where's the clock at?
The clock is Chester Hill Park. It should start to switch.
Okay.
Reverend Morton.
Sure. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity to present myself as a candidate for Comptroller for the city of Mount Vernon. My name is Darren Morton. I've decided to run for this position because I believe that I have a comprehensive executive leadership, fiscal and governmental management experience for the job. I recognize that Mount Vernon is at a crossroads and needs the right person as Comptroller. To provide the combination of vision, strategic planning, fiscal oversight to address the complex governmental and debilitating financial challenges that threaten our ability to provide the services to the residents and taxpayers of Mount Vernon. My goal is to restore trust, to improve financial efficiency, to save taxpayers money, and to enhance constituent services. My qualifications include that I have a bachelor's degree in business administration with a concentration in information systems. I also have a master's degree and a doctorate degree in executive leadership, specifically in not-for-profit and public management. I have served as a leader, executive leader, for now over almost 30 years, and specifically the last 10 years for the city of Mount Vernon, serving as the Recreation Commissioner, the Planning Commissioner, and now the Chief of Staff for Mayor Sean Patterson Howard. I have also led the budgets and the financial systems for many organizations. I also come with experience of capital project planning. And I know that the combination of my executive experience, my knowledge in public administration, where I've served as an adjunct professor at College of New Rochelle, will also help to move Mount Vernon forward. And so that's why I am offering myself up as a leader to become the next comptroller.
All right, that's good time. Next, we'll go with Derrickson. Thank you, Reverend Morton. We appreciate your comments. Derrickson, if you can.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, you're loud and
All
clear.
right, great, great, great. Look, thank you for hosting this forum. I appreciate this opportunity as well to present my candidacy to the voters through this particular platform. I'm Derrickson Lawrence, and I'm running for City Controller to bring a sense of urgency and context to the fiscal and financial challenges we face as a community. Many of you know I took legal action to bring the City Council members and others together to find an alternative to recent legislation that bypassed the Comptroller's office for the deposit of $43 million in federal funds. And the judge signed that order. So I was stunned to learn of yet a new breach that occurred just in this month, which takes away the audit function from the Comptroller. These acts, whether by design or in error, are concerning to me. And so my sense is I've got to bring, in addition to bringing attention to those, bring transparency to the Comptroller's office, implement a short and long-term plan to get our ratings back, and to be able to fix our sewers and fill potholes. These are the reasons why I'm running as an independent voice for Comptroller. Those are really the issues. How do we fix them? I sort of brought forth a mnemonic, which I call TCMT. Right now, we know there's no transparency in the Comptroller's office. So transparency is the #1 issue. 95% of the voters voted for financial transparency and fiscal accountability with the Charter Revision Commission, which I chaired. And so learning that the text was changed just recently in terms of what was encoded in the charter really sort of made me nervous, essentially subverting the will of the voters. So I think that tells another story in terms of where we are with the City Hall. There are no checks with our money centers, as we know, whether it's the IDA, the URA, the Board of Water Supply. So compliance is a major issue. As a former auditor, I bring a skill set that my competitors do not have, and that is to put a compliance framework around the money centers and the other departments. The third is budgeting. I believe we need to go to a multi-year budgeting system. there are three components to that. One is we need to
Your
work.
time is up, unfortunately.
Oh, it is.
Yes, there were some bells, that automatically pop up. If you hear those gentle chimes, it means you're running out on time.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No, but that was good. It was good. Marcus, are you with us? All right, so we're gonna go with the questions since he fell out. Reverend Morton, we're gonna start with you. The folks want to know, why are you the best candidate for this job? You'll have 2 minutes. And there you go.
Are you ready?
Yep, we're ready.
I'm sorry. Okay. So again, as I stated in my opening, my educational background is, first of all, a bachelor's of business administration with a concentration in information technology, while also I have a doctorate degree in executive leadership. But more importantly, I think that my experience is much more comprehensive in that I have also had experience also supervising financial managers, accountants, bookkeepers, those who actually are responsible for the day-to-day kind of management of our financial affairs. But coupled with that, I also have the experience of human resource development and also a know-how in public administration. And so I believe that I'm uniquely qualified for this position to provide the executive leadership that is necessary in the Comptroller's office, recognizing that Comptrollers also have to interface with the public and also have to interface with our partners as we move forward. And so that comprehensive experience and academic knowledge is what makes me uniquely qualified for this position for Mount Vernon, to be able to ensure that we have financial stability moving forward. I know how to kind of transform organizations, and that's what is needed in our finance department at this time.
Excellent. All right, thank you. Derrickson, the same question. And that question is, why are you best suited for this job?
Okay. So there are three components here. First, my education. Second is my experience, my work experience. And the third is my community drive and the efforts that I've been engaged in to impact change as relates to the specific issues that involve the Comptroller's office. So under education, we're looking at first technology. Actually, I'm an engineer, electrical engineer, so that gives me the very specific attention to detail, experience from that, but an MBA in finance, and gives me the financial experience and the know-how in terms of the accounting functions, as well as the finance functions as it relates to the job. The work experience as an auditor, the only candidate that has auditing experience coming from a major financial entity, KPMG, one of the larger accounting firms in the country, and I can bring that experience to bear. Finally, my community experience, working with the Charter Revision Commission and driving specifically the four proposals that was brought to the ballot and will affect transparency within the Comptroller's office, one, and two, that another level of experience with the county level, working with the $1.7 billion budget process, the policies, the procedures as it relates to financial gains and so on. All of these I bring to helping change the culture and the nature of the Comptroller's office. And again, it's experience that my competitors do not have. I believe I'm perfectly suited for those reasons, and I'll bring about the needed change to get our ratings back.
Excellent. All right, Marcus is back in the room again. Do you want to, can you give us can you hear us first of all?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, since you were unable to give your introduction. Do you think you could give us your introduction and answer the question, why are you best for this role as controller?
Yes, quite simply, my slogan is absolutely most qualified because I have a 30-year career in accounting at the Fortune 50 companies that all of us have known and heard of. And I'm talking the biggest companies from AIG to Berkshire Hathaway to Reader's Digest to New York Telephone, et cetera, et cetera. All of that corporate experience coupled with my um, accounting experience and working in city government really makes me best suited for this role. This is not an auditing job. This is an accounting job. This is a financial systems job. This is a blue collar, getting your sleeves rolled up, doing the work job. This is not a high end advisory job. This is a real working job. So when you look at my skill set, my financial systems acumen, I think it's quite clear that I'm the best qualified for this position. Thank you.
All right. And would you mind answering why are you best suited for this job?
Yes, absolutely. Again, this role, especially with the 4 years of mismanagement, we need a true accountant being the controller at this time. Yes, anybody can be the controller as long as they're elected. At one point, we had a funeral director being that was the controller. This is not that time. This time is once again a really roll up the sleeves, review, analyze, rejournalize, major reconciliations, preparing financials. All of this is the type of work that I've done. I've gone into companies and reset their accounting, their reporting, their financial systems. And I'm not talking little around the corner store companies. We're talking AIG, we're talking Verizon, we're talking Pernod Ricard, we're talking Pouge, we're talking large companies, and that type of accounting acumen is absolutely what we need right now. When you couple that with my city budget experience, my knowledge of how the city works, I'm absolutely best suited, and that's why my role and my slogan is most qualified for the job. The other candidates are qualified, but I feel I'm the most qualified. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, moving on. This next question will start with Derrickson. What specifically would you do to get Mount Vernon's credit rating back now? You'll have 2 minutes.
Certainly. Look, the steps of getting our ratings back has already begun, steps plural. What we have to do is really work within the framework, if you will. And so specifically, number one, we have the charter, which is intended to guide us. For some reason, we have difficulty working within that. If we're going to get our ratings back, we need to demonstrate that the policies and procedures we set for ourselves, which is just charter, we can work within that. And so to get that, I would say compliance is going to be key. Compliance in the controller's office, compliance in the IDA, URA, and the Board of Water Supply. So when we talk about that, that's not a relevant function or a light function. I think it's a key function. It's an important one. It's a role that's needed. If we're going to get our ratings back, that's what the ratings agencies are going to be looking for. Is that environment a predictable environment? Right now, we're not. If you look at what we've done over the last 5 years, there's nothing predictable about what we're doing with our finances, our procedures, or anything else. So that's where we need to be. If I'm going to invest in an organization, I want to know that I could look at a 2-year plan, a 3-year plan, and see visibility. Right now, we cannot do that with our city. That's what has to change.
Excellent, thank you. Reverend Morton, this would be your same question. We'd like to hear an answer from you. What specifically would you do to get Mount Vernon's credit rating now?
Well, I think that what was already said is true. I mean, I think that it's not a matter of there's not much that you can do more than what we've already started to do now. There are steps that need to be taken. And as I've said previously, that one of the first things we need to do, make sure that we understand exactly where we are financially. How much, what are the assets that we actually do have? What is the cash that we actually have on hand? And then also understand clearly what our debts are, right? What do we owe? Who do we owe? And what's our ability kind of to pay that. Take all of that information and complete all of the reconciliations that we need as it pertains to our accounts, and also prepare our financial statements. Because preparing our financial statements will also then be able to allow us to, one, ensure that we close out our books for each of the years. And that two, that we then also start the actual auditing process, right? To complete the audits, because the audits are absolutely needed. And those are steps that will need to be taken in order for us to kind of, first of all, prepare and then engage in conversation with the credit rating agency about restoring our credit rating. In addition to that, we also have to ensure that we have the right policies and procedures in place to ensure that there is compliance moving forward. And some of that means that there also is going to be need to be revisiting of the charter as it pertains not only the role of the comptroller, but also the role of so many other elected officials. And how do we work together as a body of elected officials to ensure that the Mount Vernon stays within the framework of ensuring that our finances are in order, and that we are able to ensure that not only the city, but also the agencies that also are part of the city, such as URA and IDA and the Board of Water Supply. And so those are steps that we will take to ensure that that happens in order for us to be able to then go out and to bond and to borrow for the future of Mount Vernon.
Thank you. Thank you. Last, Marcus, the same question. What specifically would you do to get Mount Vernon's credit rating back up now?
Sure. The first thing I'm going to do when I'm controller on January 1st, 2022, is to compile all of the debts that we have and put them in and figure out who we're going to pay first, second, and third. Our credit rating for the city is quite no different than your credit rating for your bills. The first thing the agencies want to know is, can you pay your bills? So we're going to find out who our bills are, and we're going to announce that, and we're going to figure out how we're going to pay them, and we're going to pay them fast. We have to have a good reporting structure. I'm going to put together a sound reporting structure where we report financials at first quarterly and then monthly. I'm looking to even report financials weekly, because financials and numbers can be calculated on a weekly basis. Once that's done, the credit ratings will know that we can pay our bills. The key is, can you pay your bills? And luckily for Mount Vernon, we have a good sound tax collections procedures, so where the tax collections will show that we can pay our bills. And that's what's going to get our credit rating back. It's going to take about a year or two, without a doubt, but it will be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Reverend Darren. Are you there, Reverend Morton?
I'm here.
Okay, great. In your first year in office as a controller, what are your top 3 priorities, and how would you accomplish each one?
Well, I think one of them we already just started, which is the priority of restoring of course, our credit rating. I think that the second is, of course, for us to make sure that we are able to actually pay our bills and to pay the vendors that we actually do owe, and try to figure out exactly what is our capacity to do so. And of course, as a part of that process, what we have to do is to find out exactly how many outstanding bills we have. What are those bills, and what are those debts? What are they short-term or they're long-term debts? And begin to kind of work with those that we owe in order to set up a schedule of payments, come to an agreement about how do we pay. Because again, the confidence in the city has to be that we're able to pay our bills and that we're working with our vendors and with those that we owe in order to pay these bills. I think the other goal, of course, is streamlining the processes and the policies and procedures as it pertains to our financial operation, working with the mayor and the city council to adopt the necessary policies and procedures that become standard in operation of finance for the city of Mount Vernon, working with the department heads also to ensure that there's a system for them to also have transparency of their financial operation, to be able to also help them with reconciliations and also forecasting kind of moving forward as to what it is that they need in order to ensure the services of to the residents of Mount Vernon. And so there's threefold, right? So of course, it's the operations, the efficiency of the operation, which includes policies and procedures that need to be in place. And we're working with our stakeholders to kind of do that, right? And also ensuring that we also understand our debt, pay our debts, work with our vendors and those that we owe to ensure that they have confidence in the city to be able to pay the bills. And then also working on our credit rating, because that's going to help us with our future as to how we're going to be able to pay for the things down the road, especially the big ticket items, inclusive of also developing a capital projects kind of plan. David.
Your time is up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Derek?
Okay, so the question was, what are the first three things you would do
Yes.
in the office? Well, as been discussed already, it's the issue of trying to get the ratings back, but having a long-term view of how we get there, and trying to ensure that everyone is involved and committed to that process. The second part of that is, and I think it's equally as important, is to do an inventory and assessment of where we are in terms of assets. We need to understand what we've got. I don't believe anybody understands that today. And so we need to do a real thorough assessment of what the numbers are and how deep the hole is. We need to understand the vendor payment liability and try to bring that forward and try to ensure that we have a plan to execute. We also need to do the assessment in the third area, which is our infrastructure. I'm calling it infrastructure, but it's both in terms of technology and in terms of policy, trying to understand what policies are in place. I don't believe that there are any right now based on what I've seen, so we'd have to revamp that entire thing. We have to do the same with technology so we can ensure that we can actually deliver services to residents and to certainly support the office of the mayor and respond to the city council. I think if we do those three areas, we're going to be good. But we certainly begin with the issues of how do we get on track to get that ratings back, and then follow through with assessment, then making that policy public so that we engage our citizens to be part of that plan as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Same question to you, Marcus. In your first years in the office of Comptroller, what are your top three priorities and how would you accomplish each one?
My top priorities are going to be reporting, communication, and data. Firstly, we have to really report what we have. The controllers, and I'm going to open the office, and it's going to be a welcoming, communicating office, and that's what's really lacking right now. I want to begin to put reporting packages together so that the community, the city council especially, and the mayor's office, administration knows what we have. The departments need to know what we have. We need to do some actuals to budget analysis immediately so that the departments can start performing the services that the community needs. Communication is key. The council has not been included for years in order to make the decisions that they need to make. So that is very important. That's my second point. and data is critical as well. I'm going to create systems, probably initially through Excel spreadsheets, to collect multidimensional data, access databases, so that we can really figure out how we can best serve the residents of Mount Vernon. Data is critical, and financial systems, multidimensional systems are going to be able to pull all of that data so that we can create the reporting that we need. Those are my three top priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving right along, we're going to start with Reverend Morton. Darren, the question to you, sir, is, do you agree with the recent vote by the City Council to put the Board of Water Supply in charge of the $42,600,000 from the American Rescue Plan? And how would you manage its oversight?
I'm sorry, say that again. How would I manage?
How would you, do you agree with the council putting the money from the American Rescue Plan to the water supply? You agree with them putting that in charge, the water department in charge of that money? And if not, how would you manage its oversight?
Okay. First of all, I think that I have made it very clear that I believe that, first of all, we are in a very difficult and challenging situation. I think that everybody has agreed that there are some fundamental challenges with the Comptroller's office as it states, right? I think I've also gone on record to say that I did not speak to the legality of the actual legislation itself, because again, that was not my my expertise to comment on, right? What I do believe is, I do believe that the city council and themselves have acted kind of in the best interest of the residents to try to safeguard it, especially given the fact that I have looked at the 151-page interim, interim final rule that has come from the U.S. Treasury related to it. I would prefer, again, that we have another option for us to be able to kind of manage it, and also to ensure that also our comptroller is actually able to manage the funding. How would I look at it? How would I oversee the money? Well, first of all, as I have explained, and Councilman Griffith will be able to tell you, as I explained, is that we need to ensure that that money is, first of all, completely separated. Because when you look at what the interim final rule states, that money needs to be used specifically for two main purposes. One is that it needs to address the public health issue challenges that have been caused by COVID. And two, it also needs to address the revenue shortage that occurred. And there's a formula in which they have developed for us to look at it. So therefore, the money needs to be managed. I would manage the money in a way to ensure that, first of all, that there's a clear budgeting process, there's transparency with the public as to how the money is spent, there's engagement of the public around what the money is spent on, so that it meets the primary needs of the residents of Mount Vernon, and then also make sure that we also have a reporting mechanism to ensure that we're meeting the obligations set forth by the interim final rule from the U.S. Treasury.
Thank you. Derrickson, the question to you.
Yeah. So I listened to Reverend Morton's answer here, and I've got to tell you that we've got to go beyond good intentions to safeguard the money. It's not good enough to say that we want to safeguard it, so we're going to discard our charter and our laws to do so. I'm also glad to hear him say that he wished there were better options. And so that means we can certainly work together to find alternatives, and that's the direction we need to go. There are options out there that we need to evaluate, and as a city, we need to come together to do so. There are a number of risks associated with the decision we've made. And the risks are, right now, if we don't get this right, we are going to risk the 21 million that's coming up next year. And so I really hope that under the aegis of the judge, all city council members, mayor, and the controller will be able to find a solution that works for the best interests of the city, will meet the ARP guidelines as stated by Reverend Morton, and work within our charter and our state laws.
Thank you.
So now am I supposed to respond to that because I was
Yeah, you can. You're allowed to respond. You get.
I want to make sure that I make myself very clear.
Yeah.
I agree that we should not make decisions that are based upon good intentions, and that we absolutely should follow our city charter, our rules, right? I want to make sure I make this very clear, right? What I also want to make clear too is that we also need to be able to work together to ensure that there is no jeopardizing of the money, whether that is now or whether that is later, because clearly there are some very specific regulations around this money. And some of the things, honestly, when the decision was made by the city council and the corporation with the mayor to pass the legislation that they passed, there was also less information about exactly what needs to happen and what can happen. There's a little bit more information, right, to that. And I agree that we should be working together to find a solution that does not remove any elected official from the process, but also holds the elected officials, all of them, accountable to the people of Mount Vernon to ensure that we best utilize this $21 million that's going to come to us first in the first trench and then later on. So I just want to make sure that I make that very clear about that. Okay.
All right. Marcus, the same question goes to you.
I'm glad we could do rebuttals because this makes this debate kind of exciting. I co-authored the legislation to move the money, and we really shouldn't be calling it the water department. The water department is serving as a TPA, a third-party administrator of these funds. This is totally separate money. This money is no different than the way we use the Urban Renewal Agency's federal money. We are, the Comptroller has returned federal money to the federal government. These are taxes that we pay to the federal government and they are awarding us back with. So we cannot risk it going to the Comptroller's office at this time. And it's not outside of the law. So the council and the mayor's office and Reverend Morton worked with us on this because he's a participating and a participant in the process. But people that outside, the one thing that's hurting us the most are people of outside that are suing us without even asking us about the process that we created. We are very careful in this COVID money that will probably save the city of Mount Vernon for the next year or so. So I'm not going to change it at all. Well, let me correct that. The direction that we are taking is the right direction. We will modify the legislation as needed as we go forward, but there is absolutely no way that we are going to go in a totally different direction. And it's shameful for people to actually sue us without asking us the purpose of how we created that legislation. Thank you.
All right. So moving on to our next question. This question will start with Derrickson. Do you support the freeze on residential development in the city of Mount Vernon until it has a comprehensive plan? How can we continue to build when the infrastructure issues that we have, like antiquated sewer and water systems and an insufficient electrical grid, as well as parking issues arise? What is your plan?
Yeah, actually, I would consider that. So the citizens voted for a comprehensive plan. Again, something else that in spirit we adopted. 95% of the folks said that's what they want. And if you look at what's going on right now, it's a development zone where everything works. Any and everything just, I mean, that's the perspective. And so we do need to put the brakes. We do need to have a better understanding of where development needs to go. And really, we probably need to begin certain aspects of the comprehensive plan now, so that we have some idea if there are mandatory and key opportunities that we may not want to miss in terms of development, sort of give that some level of consideration. But certainly one of the keys that we ought to consider is that we have an infrastructure that has fallen apart and sewers backing up in people's basements. And we are not giving enough credit to some of the weaknesses that we have as it relates to that issue. So for all of those reasons, I would say, yes, we need to look at a pause on this sort of spot zoning and just everything works all at the same time kind of environment. I think that's going to hurt us in the long term.
Excellent. Marcus, the same question to you.
Well, thank you. The plans that the city council have put in place are actually what any land use professional would call micro plans for certain zones. We have halted all spot zoning. We've created zones in the city that make sense for the city and are beneficial to the city. So the concept of rezoning the entire city is people don't understand how planning really works. When we did Mount Vernon West, we redeveloped the entire Mount Vernon West zone towards the train station with one of our biggest assets as the key. We did the same thing with Mount Vernon West. When we did the senior overlay zone, which allowed senior houses where we wanted senior houses because we didn't want them in certain areas. These are all comprehensive plans. The comprehensive plan is not a function of the Comptroller's office, but the benefits of building are going to help our infrastructure. Without some of these buildings, the infrastructure improvements will have to be paid by the taxpayers. So when you look at Mount Vernon West and you understand that some of those buildings built water retention basins, which helped the infrastructure. When you look at MX1 to understand that the sewer leaking into the Hutchinson River will be benefited because those buildings will help pay for the very expensive work that needs to be done. All of that is a comprehensive view of how our city works. We're not going to rezone the single family areas. I'm a big proponent of our next comprehensive plan being a traffic study to do neighborhood calming so that cars don't zip through and find shortcuts through residential neighborhoods. That is a function of the comprehensive plan. And you may ask us, what does Marcus know? Well, if you look at the Westchester County Comprehensive Plan, Westchester 2025, I co-authored that when I sat on the Westchester County Planning Board years ago. So thank you. A lot of work has been done to work to get the city's infrastructure improvements done cooperatively. Thank you.
Reverend Morton, same question to you.
Yes, thank you. No, I would not be a proponent of us completely halting development. However, I do believe that we must take a very deliberate approach as to how we do that. Now, what we've done so far, as previously was stated, is there have been a number of neighborhood studies that have been done with the understanding that those neighborhood studies would actually fold into the comprehensive plan in which they would be part of it. So one, I think the public needs to understand that really the comprehensive plan has already started, right? I mean, there was already a draft that was done earlier underneath of the Clinton administration. But in addition to that, there have also been some additional neighborhood plans that also have been done that will become part of that. I do also agree, however, that we must make sure that whatever we do moving forward, that one, we should ensure that the consideration upon infrastructure and the impact upon infrastructure must be a part of any of those plans that we have going forward. I also believe that we do have to reimagine and rethink how do we deal with some of these tax credits and the pilots that occur, and what their impact is. I mean, we've made some strides this year with IDA and working with the school district to make sure that we are opening up the doors of communication to ensure that we are not causing any major adverse effects upon this community. And so I think that as we continue to work together collaboratively and begin to think outside of the box and begin to envision what Mount Vernon will be, as we work aggressively or assertively to complete this comprehensive plan, which is going to take some time to kind of do, we will be able to, from a standpoint of very intelligently, then develop moving forward with less adverse impact financially on the residents of Mount Vernon, and also ensure that the economy continues to kind of advance forward. That would be the goal. And as comptroller, I would sit at the table to try to advocate for that.
You're okay, perfect. Time's up. Derrickson?
He answered the question. He was first.
A long time ago.
All right, next question. We're going to start with Marcus for this next question. What would your parameters be for future pilots? And would you commit to giving the public the information on them?
First of all, let's talk about some misconceptions. Pilots are not done by the city council. Pilots are not done by the controller's office. Pilots are done by the Industrial Development Agency, the IDA. The mayor was sharp enough to include me in the IDA for the last 2 years. And I can tell you that we have not approved any more residential, well, with one exception, pilot agreements. And some of the pilot agreements that were done in the last administration were horrific, absolutely horrific. And the council was appalled by them through the last administration. The only pilot that we have done residentially was a continual pilot for Ebony Gardens. And we thought that was the right thing to do. But the new IDA has been very harsh on any residential. We've actually been kind of harsh on some of the commercial properties that are looking to seek pilots. We have let some go through. So I ask anybody to zoom into any of the latest IDA meetings and see how we've been acting. There's one developer that shopped their building in Fleetwood, right on the hill of Broad Street. They had no intention of having a pilot. However, they showed up at the IDA and asked for a pilot. And we were very harsh with them. We actually said to them, we think you should move forward with your build. And if you need help down the line, then come in and ask us for help. But don't ask us for help initially. And I even asked for a park plan, which means what happens if you do not build? Because we definitely don't want to see a chain link fence on the top of Broad Street, right above Gramerton Avenue. So my approach is very strong and very business oriented. Pilots are supposed to be about generating business. I call it the coupon for businesses to get them in the door. It is not supposed to be for very long-term, 30-year, even 40-year pilot agreements to where the developer can make a lot of money. So that's my approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Reverend Morton?
Yes. So your question was, would I consider reimagining?
What would your parameters be for future? I'm going to restart the clock. Give me a second. What would your parameters be for future pilots? And would you commit to giving the public this information?
Okay, so parameters. I think that, yes, I think we need to make sure that we continue along the pathway in which has been done over the last year and a half, almost 2 years underneath the Sean Patterson Howard administration, which is to make sure that we are carefully considering pilots and what their worth may be to the city of Mount Vernon. I think that as a part of that process, we also need to possibly revisit our uniform tax exemption policy, right? And to be able to make sure that we are working with the other jurisdictions that it actually affects. In this case, it's actually the school district and, of course, the county. all right, to ensure that we, again, are being collaborative about how we approach pilots and how they are actually administered, when they are beneficial and when they absolutely are not. The second part of your question is about information. Absolutely. I think that transparency to the public, to make sure that the public also understands exactly what's happening. The more informed you have a public, the better the community will be. And they will understand. It will stop some of the minutiae and some of the mis or disinformation that is oftentimes given out. So yes, I would absolutely be committed to ensuring that that information is out. But I also think that we need to begin to kind of reimagine how we do pilots along the same lines in which we've already begun to do in this present administration, having served now as the treasurer for now a little bit over a year.
Thank you. Derrickson?
All right, so I'm going to just disagree with both my competitors here on this one. From this standpoint, draw a line. The whole concepts of pilots, we all know what that is to incentivize folks to come in. And when we do that and we give them those tax breaks, somebody has to pick up that cost. If we're picking that cost up as residents, that's a challenge. If we're picking up that cost for, a residential unit, and you have more kids in the school district and all the rest of the stuff that goes along, that's a challenge. And it's unclear that that's been the case where we've done the work to ensure that when you do the cost benefit analysis and you actually have a product that's not paying for itself, meaning you're pushing the cost down to residents, these things actually go on. And so I'm not in favor of that. I would certainly look at that harshly when it comes to products that pay for themselves, commercially based, driven. That's something else we ought to look at. But again, the pilots that we have with the IDA, we haven't done very well, as my competitors have just said, because right now the IDA is not functioning in Mount Vernon. I understand that the county is now running it. So we haven't done a great job. There's a number of things we need to do better. And certainly as controller, I hope the controller has a role on the board going forward, because that's not the case today.
Okay, excellent. So now we're going to take a subsection of questions that were given to me by the group. These are directed at individuals specifically. Since Reverend Morton went second, he will get the first question. The second question will go to Marcus, and the last question to Derek, and the last question will go to Marcus. So, Reverend Morton, you have worked for 4 administrators. The city does not appear any better. Some people say it's getting worse. Why should we think for you as controller, and what could you do to turn the city around?
Thank you for that question. In fact, I'm glad that you asked it. So one of the things that I've said over and over again is that I am very proud of the work that I have tried to do, that I have done for the city of Mount Vernon for these last 9.5, almost 10 years under 4 administrations. But I also recognize that I have done that being in what we would call, I guess, the 2nd or 3rd chair. And I also recognize that I have also done that being a part of boards, specifically the Urban Renewal Agency, for many years, in which there are challenges. And I don't run away from that. I've never run away from the fact that there are challenges and there are some balls that have been dropped in collective leadership. Absolutely. But what I think that every last one of the 4 mayors will tell you is that I've always been very focused in on resolutions, solving the problems, and also giving new and innovative ways in order for us to move things forward. I'm also proud of the achievements that I've done, that I have also contributed to each one of those administrations advancing and moving them forward. What I look forward to as the comptroller, as being the elected official who is completely and totally directly accountable to the people of Mount Vernon, right? And to be able to have Mount Vernon see Darren Morton not in second or third chair, but Darren Morton in first chair, and Darren Morton being specifically accountable to the people of Mount Vernon, right? To be able to show that I also have the ability to, first of all, be innovative, to be a strategic planner, to be a visionary, to also well manage people well, manage finances well, and to also come up with creative, innovative ways in order to ensure that our finances are solid and that our finances are strong, right? And so that's what I asked. I asked for them to look at my record of contribution, right, to the city of Mount Vernon, and to know that I brought in millions of dollars into the city of Mount Vernon, right? I've created two not-for-profits to support the city of Mount Vernon, to ensure that that actually we have other means of revenues to come in to lower the burden upon the taxpayers, right? I have pushed forward and I've been an advocate for ensuring that we have policies and procedures in place, right? And so, yes, I have served as a good team member. Now I want to be the leader in a specific area that I know is important to the operation. Finance is important. My mama used to tell me, where you spend your money is where your priorities are. And that's what I want to do, is focus it.
Excellent. The next question will be directed to Derrickson. People say that the only time they hear from you is when you want to run for some type of office. What is your response to this?
Obviously, they may not live in Mount Vernon. I think everybody on this call has seen my work over the last 6 years. I'm involved in 7 different initiatives that have had major impact on the voters, going from the tax forum, bringing several leaders to the city of Mount Vernon to talk about municipal budgeting and developing the kind of best practices that the city of Mount Vernon needs to look at as we begin going forward. Looking at the crime initiative, taking guns off the streets, looking at the educational initiative, changing the process of learning, looking at the tree planting initiative, being one of the initial members on there. The list goes on. So I can give you 5 or 7 other things. So I think whoever would bring that up would clearly not living in Mount Vernon to make that kind of statement.
All right. Thank you. Marcus, yours is the last question. This is specifically asked by the group. It has been reported by the Low HUD newspaper that a company that you own owes over $100,000 in back taxes for an apartment building. Why should we expect you to handle Mount Vernon's fiscal responsibilities when you can't handle your own?
Can't handle my own, right? So first of all, I have a business in Mount Vernon, right? I'm not only a resident here, I have a business here. I've had that business for over 20 years. I put down over $150,000 in 1999 for that business. The little bit of money that I owe will be paid. It is not an issue. That is how business works. I will pay every dime of it. So my investment in the city is more reason that I am most qualified for this position. I understand completely tax certiorari's assessment, commercial property values. I understand residential property values. I understand tax exempt property values because I write the checks for 3 non-for-profits in this community. So all in all, I still say I'm the most qualified because I have had the balls to invest in this city heavily. So I actually paid a portion of those taxes today. I tried to pay them on Friday, but the comptroller's office was closed. And I snuck in today to pay them, and hopefully the checks gets cashed. I'm not the only one that has this issue. There are hundreds of people that have exactly this same issue. The comptroller's office needs to provide payment agreements with the residents so that they can smooth out their payments. I can tell you one thing, my residents have heat, they have decent service, they are not neglected in any way possible. I'm proud of my investment in Mount Vernon, and I have investments all around the country in multiple states. Everything will be paid as they have been paid for the last 20 years. Who else can say that? Who else can say that they have a business that they've held in this city for 20 years? I'm the most qualified for this position. Thank you.
Okay. That concludes our direct question segment from this. And we only have 2 more questions for the evening. Since Marcus went last, we're going to start with the Reverend Derek Morton. The Youth Bureau rented space in a building which is known to be a campaign headquarters to many candidates, supported by the manager of the building. Do you find it right for the Youth Bureau to rent this space without sending an RFP?
Say that to rent the space without.
An RFP.
Well, first of all, I think the question would be as to what is the amount of the actual contract itself. I think that under all circumstances that there should be transparency, right? And so the procurement process for the city of Mount Vernon must be upheld. And if that is not the case, then it is problematic, right? For it. However, we also have to recognize that we do need to ensure that we have the right facilities for our youth and our recreation programs, right? And so in doing so, we need to first of all make sure that we have the right specs. And so RFP, one of the advantages of that is, of course, that an RFP would also provide for you to ensure that there was consistency across the board and that you also understood clearly exactly what was being required for the services that needed to be provided for it. And so the proper way to ensure that we are engaging in some sort of contract, depending upon, again, the level and the threshold, according to the procurement process, is for there to have been a RFP. Absolutely.
Thank you. Same question to you, Derrickson.
You can repeat that.
Yeah, sure. Ooh. The Youth Bureau has rented a space in a building which is known to be the campaign headquarters, to be rented out as campaign headquarters by the manager of that building. Do you find it right for the Youth Bureau to rent this office space without even sending out an RFP?
You know, many of the practices that we see being unearthed are head scratchers, because you would think that the way in which we ought to operate is by ensuring that we have an equal play. So yeah, RFPs are the kinds of things that you would want to see, especially when there's the perception of favoritism going in something like that. So it doesn't look good. I don't know what the circumstances were as to why that decision was made. But again, for me, it's just a head scratcher. And it's another reason why when I talk about our culture within our city government is broken, that's what I'm referring to.
Okay, thank you. Marcus, the same question to you.
Ask it one more time, please.
Sure. The Youth Bureau has rented space in a building which is known to be campaign headquarters for many candidates. The owner of the building is manager of that building. Do you find it right for the Youth Bureau to rent office space without even sending out an RFP? Essentially, the building manager is renting space that also rents out to campaign headquarters.
Right. I'm going to flip it a little bit. Let's add some juice to this, right? First of all, the Youth Bureau is housed on pretty much in the attic of City Hall. The Youth Bureau is so dynamic They deserve their own building. So we need to look for that. We need to allocate space for our youth, and it shouldn't be at the top of City Hall. So the Youth Bureau got a huge grant, and with that grant, they had new employees. There was no place for the employees to sit. So what they had to do was go out and find office space. It just happens to be that the most up-to-date office space just happens to be in that building and had available space. So could that have been an RFP? Possibly. The council voted for this, and what we concluded was that the Youth Bureau did their due diligence, and we needed to move forward. So I'm in the middle of all of that. I actually rent a mailbox in that building, right? Because it is the most convenient. It's open 24 hours. It has air conditioning. It has a bathroom, et cetera, et cetera. We moved forward with that. At the end of the day, I may get a fries at McDonald's just because it's in Mount Vernon, and I didn't get an RFP from Burger King. It just doesn't comport all the time. And the council didn't feel that this was one of those times that we needed to stretch out any further. My record shows that I voted for it at the end of the day. We did pause on it, but at the end of the day, we did vote on it because the grant for the youth is what's most important. Thank you.
Time's up there. Our final question of the evening would be, what changes will you make in your role as comptroller to be transparent with the city within City Hall spending, so that the people of Mount Vernon feel confident that the city budget is being handled responsibly? We're going to start with Derrickson for this one.
All right. Well, look, I'm going to introduce a concept that we haven't heard so far, although I'm sure people should have thought through this. Every year we go through our budget process, and what's the major complaint we get? We're budget year after year after year, and we look at just the budget line, right? What did we budget for last year versus, and we never have an understanding of what that baseline is year to date. So one of the things I'm going to call for actually this year, let us bring our year to date information as part of that budget process. I'll suggest to you, our chief of staff, to begin that process now, collect that data now. Don't say at the end of the year, well, we're depending on the controller for it, and the controller didn't do it. You are the chief of staff. You should be able to get your departments some Excel product. I'm just being facetious here, but some product to collect that data now, so that by the end of the year, you have 6-month data that you can use to project for next year. I think these are the foundational changes we're going to need to better understand how we're doing financially, just in the event that the controller doesn't provide the information we need. Beyond that, it's starting the process early, which is now, so that we can begin to understand what we need to do for next year when the other 21 million comes in. So it's, I'm talking about the changes, but it should begin now rather than when I'm elected as controller.
All right. Reverend Morton, do you want to respond to that?
Well, I can respond to it and also include, I guess, my response to your question, if that's what you wish.
I mean, if you want to, that's fine.
It's up to you. I mean, up to you.
Yeah, it's fine. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, absolutely, I agree that we need to be budgeting based upon our actuals to not only to date for the year in which we are in, but also looking at also our trend of spending for years previously. The inherent problem with that is that we've not been able to kind of get some of that information as it pertains to the trend spending from the Comptroller's office in order for us to be able to utilize it. Now, the statement that was made by, again, as she says, he often says, my competitor, about being able to do it, and now as the chief of staff not waiting. Well, we haven't been waiting. In fact, we actually collected as much of the information as we possibly could from the department heads about their expenditures for the first quarter. Here's the element of that my competitor does not understand fully how this works in the city government, right? There is a lot of lines and budgeted expenses, including salaries, including money that comes in from the government, including some of the expenditures as pertains to utility expenses and things of that sort, that only the comptroller can provide. So yes, by the end of the year, we will have all of the expenditures that we as the department have been able to record and that we know that we have on a quarterly basis. The information that we will be missing is that information that absolutely has to come from the comptroller. As the comptroller, I will ensure that we will have the actuals to date. We will have the trends of the spending over the last 4 or 5 years to ensure that we are budgeting appropriately. So I agree. We absolutely need to start. That's what I would do. In addition to that, what I also would state that we will do is also have participatory budgeting process. We'd also make sure that we have an enterprise resource system in place that works with Munis to ensure that one, the public is aware how we're budgeting. And then in addition to that, that there is participation at every level, including the mayor, the city council, and the department heads, so that they can all contribute to the budgeting process. That's how I perceive for us to move forward.
Your time is up. Okay, perfect. Marcus?
Give me the question again,
Sure.
please.
Sure. What changes will you make in your role as controller to be transparent with the spending in City Hall so that the people of Mount Vernon feel confident that the city budget is being handled responsibly?
Yes, well, again, as a 20+ year financial systems analyst and reporter, I'm going to report the actuals to the budget accurately on a monthly basis. But what's shocking to me is that Derrickson Lawrence would actually challenge Reverend Morton to having the departments have their own accountants in place. That is absolutely not what the charter or the code refers for us to do. The controller's role is to handle the finances, and that is what is absolutely not happening. So it's not the role of the departments to begin to become accountants and to record their own financials. That is the role of the controller. So the controller is the financial lead in the city, and the controller needs to help the departments get their numbers straight. It is a scapegoat to say that it's okay for the departments to go ahead and begin to have their own accountants in place. I'm surprised and disappointed to hear that in a candidate. The city has done all that it can with the difficulties that we have in this controller's office. I'm going to provide reporting to each department. I'm going to make sure that the departments have a budget analysis on a regular basis. I'm going to recommend to the departments, if they do fall short in their budget, recommendations as to how we can transfer funds. You have to understand how government works if you're going to apply to be a government CFO. You just can't wing it off to the side or do lawsuits without talking to the people that are doing the job. Thank you.
Derrickson, as you were mentioned in Marcus's.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that, and it's not even worth the response because everybody listening to what Marcus has said, I'm trying to be kind with the words here to respond.
No, go.
But
Say what you want to say.
We have is when you look at our budget process this year, clearly we could have done a much better job rather than sit back and say, well, we just couldn't get any data from our controller. And so we waited till the last minute. And then so we had a late budget, which crippled our finances, our short-term delivery of operations from January to March. And we saw all of what happened with that, with the boiler underwater, the late payments of overtime, all the number of things that occurred because we didn't pass a budget at time. I think there's some things we can do, still work within the confines of what you have as a system and still be able to deliver. That's the point I'm making. So to make it seem like that's sort of off the wall, I think it's incredulous. The other point that you make in terms of suing, that was the right thing to do because the judge agreed by signing the order, and you and everybody else as part of the city will have to comply. I'm glad to hear Reverend Morton talk about maybe we should look at it. We didn't have all the information. So the city council violated the charter. You know it, I know it, the judge knows it, and we're going to have to come up with an alternative. You as the head of the city council, you erred, you made a mistake, just as you made a mistake with the charter revision. Everybody voted on charter revision. And instead of just taking the information and putting it in the charter, what we have here is a new set of information that really subverts the will of the voters. Now, you know, to your credit, I've heard you say that, well, that wasn't our intent. We just didn't know what was happening. So we voted on this thing and we had no idea what was changed. Again, it points to the fact that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. Our city's function is in disrepair, it's broken, and that's going to impact how we are perceived in terms of ratings and everything else.
Marcus, do you want to reply?
Yes, absolutely. Derrickson Lawrence has clearly demonstrated that he's not fit for this position. He, with his charter committee group, he intended to get rid of the position of controller that he's now seeking to be as controller. He then said that you need to find a way to go around the problem if you know that there is a problem. And that's exactly what the council has done with this rescue money. We've seen the problem. We're trying to find a way to legally and appropriately route the money to agencies that will administer the money correctly to save the city. And we did it collectively with the administration and a huge majority of the council. And as far as the charter revision piece, the city council doesn't handle the administrative processing of what goes into the 360 code. So we were appalled that it wasn't exactly as the Charter Revision Committee put it together. This referendum, we intended to go directly into the code. And for you, sir, to try to make claims that any of the council members, we discussed this last night, any of the council members that would usurp the authority of a referendum is horrific for you to approach. So we're all working hard in the conditions that we have to continue to move this city forward. And instead of asking us and talking to us and coming in to find out, Derrickson Lawrence, with his pompous approach, thinks that he can come up with concepts that will never work in the city. And then to have the nerve to sue in the middle of it, it's just totally against all that we are trying to do to save our city from the destructive administration that we've had in the past and the negligent controller that we have right now. We're trying to do it calmly and professionally. And I sat with Reverend Morton today to discuss ongoing issues to protect this city. So, Mr. Lawrence, shame on you for running continually and never winning an election. We're tired of your pompous approach and not coming in to help save this city from what we need to do.
Your time's up.
Thank you.
I need to make some clarifications here. So what was stated earlier was about not waiting until, the last minute in order to do a budget. So let's clarify this, right? The budget process for 2021 started in June of 2020 with a request from the mayor and the city council to the comptroller to obtain information in order which is in accordance with the charter, which is required of the comptroller to provide on June 30th. That information did not come. The information was then requested of all of the departments for them to give what was then called their annual estimates in August, inclusive of the Comptroller's office. The information from the Comptroller's office came related to her department in September. In addition to that, also on hard copy, which you call PDF format, there also came a copy of a trial balance and also information as it pertains to the first 3 quarters of the 2020 year, in which there were codes that were missing. There were budgeted codes that were missing. And the revenues were for the fiscal year of 19 and not 20. What did we do? What did Darren Morton do? Darren Morton converted the PDF format that was given to us into an Excel file, went through every line to clarify and make sure that the amounts were accurate on it, right? In order for us to use it. Then we forecast the expenditures for the 4th quarter of 2020 in order for us to have just basic information. What was still missing from this information was the revenues, because the revenues were from the year before and not last year. And so therefore we used what information we could in order to try to develop a budget for the ensuing year. We've stated over and over again that, as was stated before, that this was not the proper way to kind of do this. So I don't want the misinformation or disinformation to go away from here as if we just sat on our hands, waited until November in order for us to begin to try to do a budget process. But we started early as June, and we utilized all of the information we had, including information that we got from the department heads, in order for us to try to do our best to put together a budget for 2021. Now that's the facts of what happened in order to move forward.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna let everybody have a moment to address everyone in your closing statements. We're going to start with Marcus. Then we're going to go with Reverend Morton and Derrickson. Marcus?
These are closing statements, sir?
Yes.
Oh, we were just beginning to have, okay.
Got a little too steamy in here, so
No, I love it. I love it. So thank you, Mount Vernon. Thank you, Fleetwood, Citizen Society. In 2008, I came on the council because of my accounting acumen, and I've continued working on that. I've worked on 10 budgets throughout the year. Some we brought up at 7%. Mostly we brought them closer to the mark. I am a heavy taxpayer in this city. I believe in bringing in the taxes as low as possible to get the services that we need. My financial background is very sound. It is unmatched with the corporations that I've worked for and the work that I've done. I've volunteered my time for this city, not only for non-for-profits, but also for the city itself. And I've worked in many different departments, and I'm not a bragger. You won't see me out on Facebook bragging about the work that I do. But my financial acumen, my planning and land use abilities are very sound. So I'm asking for the city to vote for me on 6A, just like I asked for the city to vote for me in 2009. I'm a much better accountant than I even was then. I can promise you that all of the financial information that this city needs, the data that this city needs to move forward, can easily come from me. I believe I am the most qualified in this race. You will not be disappointed with Marcus Griffith, 6A. I also ask you to go to marcusgriffith.com to see the volunteer work that I've done and the tours that I've done. I love this city. If you vote for me, you're going to be very well pleased. And I also say that if you don't vote for me, my term here is gone, and the city would lose a tremendous amount of information that I have as far as financials and land use. So it would be better served for the city to vote me in, to continue to have Reverend Darren Morton work with the city as well. We work together. We could continue to bring the city together. As far as Derrickson Lawrence, I say don't even bother. It's not even worth it. Thank you, and God bless the city of Mount Vernon.
Reverend Morton.
Good evening, and once again, I want to thank you all for allowing us to be here today to offer ourselves up and to present our candidacy. Want to thank the Fleetwood Citizen Society for being our host. What I want you to know that Darren Morton is much more, of course, than a preacher and much more than a second chair or third chair administrator. Darren Morton is an executive leader who has managed multi-million-dollar budget operations, has also participated in and led capital projects of upwards of $70 million. Darren Morton comes with a very unique, eclectic skill set to be able to not only do fiscal management responsibility, but also to ensure that we have cooperation in our finance department and cooperation among our elected leaders. I promise you that we will restore the trust, the public trust. We will also improve the efficiency of the financial operation. We will also ensure that we start to save taxpayers' money, look for new revenue streams. We will also ensure that we enhance our constituent services. That's what we will do. But I also recognize and know that I will not be able to do it alone, but we will do it together. We will absolutely have an accountant that is in the office to focus in on the operations. And I will also be the elected official that will be accountable for ensuring that you have what you need. I want you to know that I'm an independent thinker. I've worked for 4 mayors, but I am not going to be anybody's yes man. I'm not just going to sign off, but I am going to be the good steward of your fiscal affairs, of your money, to ensure that we are able to provide the services necessary for the residents and the taxpayers of Mount Vernon. I ask that you vote for me, position 7 on June 22nd. Thank you so very much.
Derrickson?
Okay, so look, as I travel the city of Mount Vernon and speak to voters, they are really tired and frustrated and saddened. Because they do feel powerless in an environment that has been dominated by this sort of musical chair style of politics, of the same people being recycled, leading to disastrous results. We have gotten to the point where the legal action that was taken certainly has merit, despite what you've heard, because a judge signed that order, and that judge is waiting for us to come back to her with answers. So it's good to forge consensus. There are alternatives, and we're going to find those together. And I'm glad to be a part of that effort, to lead that effort, to get us the answers we need so that we don't risk the $21 million that's coming for next year. In the remaining weeks of this election cycle, I ask you not to drink the Kool-Aid. Evaluate candidates on their records. Both of my competitors, they're good people, but they do have public records. Look at those. Look at Reverend Morton's, who was the treasurer of the Urban Renewal Agency for the last 5 years. Look at the 2016 audits and see what came out of that. Look at Marcus Griffith's work and how he's handled himself. Look, I believe as a contrast to my competitors, I offer independence. I offer strategic view. I offer a sound background in auditing and finance and leadership to work within the framework of the Charter and the Board of Estimates and Control to bring our city together, to safeguard our funds, to make the right decisions to get us back on track so we can get our ratings. That's what we need. We don't need the drama. We need to be able to execute and say to New Rochelle and the rest of our neighbors that we can truly be competitive. Let us be that shining city on the hill. I'm Derrickson Lawrence, 8A. Vote for an experienced candidate. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to turn the meeting over to John for his farewells.
Yeah, okay. Again, I want to thank you, gentlemen. You all seem very well qualified. You do have an inkling to get the city going, which is good, and you certainly have a lot of spunk in you. There was a little sparks going back and forth for a while, which some people enjoyed. and other people thought it was, action, but you all did well. And I wish to thank you all, and we will have this go out on they call it Spike on
YouTube.
Facebook, so it will be heard by many, many more people. Thanks again, and thank everybody who did come aboard to listen in.